Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. And if you are just tuning in with me for the very first time, it's so nice to meet you. And I'm really glad you're here with me today. I am your host, Heather Carey, nutritionist, chef, mom, and a woman who has been around the block with food. I want to open up about real food in relation to health, weight, and our bodies so you can make peace with what you eat. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Real Food Stories. We're in the heart of summer right now, which means visits to the farmers markets and hopefully growing some of your own vegetables or herbs in your very own garden, whether that is a container on your deck, a pot of basil in your kitchen, or a larger outdoor garden. Now, back in April, I had my guest, who's going to be on today, Elizabeth Bruckner. She was on our show to talk about homesteading and gardening, and it was totally eye-opening to me. We ended that episode, which is episode 116, by the way, if you want to go back and take a listen, with the realization that homesteading is a mindset. It's not about necessarily living off the grid in Alaska, although that is totally fine too if you want to do that. But homesteading really is about mindset and habits. So if you did catch my conversation with Elizabeth, you'll remember how a garlic shortage during COVID led Elizabeth down a completely unexpected path. From acupuncturist to full-blown front yard gardener, fermentation expert, and now author of The Homesteader Mindset. We talked all about her journey, what it means to live closer to your food, and yes, she even convinced me to try making my own vinegar. So today, we're picking up right where we left off, but going even deeper. Because here's the thing, creating a life that feels more connected and nourishing isn't just about compost or a gaggle of backyard chickens, although all of that stuff is great too. It's about small, consistent habits, the kind that make you feel grounded, more alive, and yes, more joyful. And Elizabeth is the perfect person to guide us through that shift. Whether you're garden curious, fascinated with fermentation, or just trying to figure out how to get started with something new, this episode is for you. So let's dive into what it really means to build a homesteader mindset and how to make it stick, one tiny habit at a time. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you since we have talked? We got on the podcast back in April of 2025, in case someone listens to this somewhere in the future. But we were talking a couple months ago about homesteading. And as we talked, I mean, you definitely, if anyone's listened to that last episode, Elizabeth reminded me and inspired me that I could actually make my own homemade vinegar. This is part of the homesteading philosophy. And it never really occurred to me to do that because I make a lot of other things. I bake bread. I have a huge vegetable garden. I have chickens, bees, the whole thing. But vinegar was not one that made my list. But so she challenged me, and here we are now in July, and I made my vinegar and it came out great. And I'm using it as a kitchen counter spray that I diluted with some water. So, and while also I did that, while I was having things sit on my counter, I also decided to make some sauerkraut and I made some kimchi, which I have done in the past. But I'm not going to lie, there's something about making my own food, and we can talk more about this, is like, like going along with this homesteader's mindset, that I have a little trepidation about. I feel like if it's not coming out of the store, out of like a factory, then I don't know if it's like truly safe. And so I have a little hesitation. What do you feel about that?
I love that we're talking about it. So the image that came into my mind is, I'm sure you've seen on YouTube, people putting cucumbers behind cats and then the cat recognizing the cucumber and jumping like crazy. It's hilarious and not very nice.
I have not seen that.
Yeah.
No.
And so it's just this innate knowing that cats do not like things that look sort of like snakes, I think, is my guess. And so they see it and they jump up in the air every single time, right? Cats, like every now and then there's one dumb cat or super brave cat that's like, meh, it's just a cucumber. But this reminds me that we also, our brains are programmed to look for danger. And we're always looking for danger in the unknown. And so, because we were raised in a generation where you got all your food from the store, I did not know until a few years ago that my grandma had she had a dairy cow when my brother was growing up. He was raised on raw milk. I had no idea because we didn't talk about it because we got milk at the grocery store like everybody else. And so, when we look at those patterns, it's a beautiful thing that your body is telling you, be careful, go go carefully here, make sure that you're not doing something that's going to harm you. With that being said, for me, the best way to get past that fear of the unknown, because I was terrified of eating something that was going to make me die. I mean, how many news stories have we heard of someone, and there are some things that can be kind of tricky. For example, if you take olive oil and you infuse it with garlic, a lot of people are leaving that on their counter, and then the olive oil gets rancid, and sometimes botulism can grow in that olive oil. So yes, it can be dangerous at times. And so the best way to surpass that is to give your brain more knowledge so that it can actually identify what is safe and what's unsafe. The first tool that you have, which is my absolute favorite tool, because unless you cut it off to spite your face, your nose is quite. I'm so proud of myself for throwing that little play on words.
Yeah,
your nose is the best tool that you could possibly have. If it smells funky, and not like in a sauerkraut funky, but oh my gosh, that's like, that thing needs to get thrown out into the trash. That is a good indication that you should not be trying it. With that being said, when it comes to lactofermentation of vegetables, it's very rare that you'll get something harmful or deadly on it. What I usually say to students and patients alike is, if you see a mold that is a fancy color, then you do not want to eat it. So if it's like white, a lot of times that's called common yeast, and you can just like mix that into the ferment. But if it's brown or a really fancy green or really pretty blue, take a picture of it, post it on Instagram, and then throw it away. Now, some people would even say, oh, well, you can just scrape it off. But I like to be safe rather than sorry. So the more that I recognize what's going on in this fermentation. If there's enough salt in that fermentation, especially for lactobacillus, what happens is the salt inhibits all the other bacteria while the lactobacillica goes wild and crazy. And that's the good stuff that's going to make you super happy, and that you buy, expensive probiotics full of it. Now, I think maybe we didn't talk about this, but I need to say it because I'm so excited about your sauerkraut. 1 teaspoon of sauerkraut has more probiotics in variety and amount of probiotic cells than an entire bottle of that $68 probiotic, refrigerated fancy bottle that you get at the supermarket. So you just made an incredible vitamin for your family. But does that make sense? Like, this idea that knowledge really is power, and the more we know, the less scared we can be. Just like with your vinegar, you had the little acid strips that will tell you. There are, and that costs like $4 on Amazon to get those strips. Sometimes I use them when it's with cleaning vinegar. Sometimes I don't. I use it more out of curiosity now, because I want to see, what's the level getting to. And I do want to talk about vinegar a little bit, because here's my vinegar bottle that I have to fill up.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
So
I should have brought mine with me to show you, but I
yeah.
don't have it with me, unfortunately.
Yeah, no worries. I'll model mine, but mine is empty. It needs to be filled up. But I want to talk about what I do in terms of making it easier, like reducing the friction in terms of a habit. So I'm going to make another dose of my bathroom cleaner. I have one for my bathroom and one for my kitchen, and I use these for the counters. If I need to scrub something, I'll throw a little baking soda on it, and that's like my scrubber. That's kind of like what soft scrub used to be, but there's no chemicals involved. And what I do here is I label it bathroom cleaner. Sadly, it's in a plastic bottle right now, which I don't recommend. I think get a glass bottle. But then on the label, you can write what is in it. So for me, I don't want to have to remember my formula, but I want want it to smell the same each time. So I'll write vinegar plus water, H2O. That's half and half vinegar, half water. And then I write down the essential oils that I put in it. For my bathroom, I do 5 drops of rosemary, 5 drops of tea tree, and then 15 drops of lemongrass to give it that lemongrass, that lemony smell. And so now I don't have to think about it. It makes it easier. And so I thought I'd bring this over to tell you about it because a lot of people think like, oh, you got to make the vinegar and it's going to take all day. And no, it takes, what did it take for you in terms of mixing it every day?
Oh, it took me a few seconds to just to make sure that things were submerged. And you're really not, I mean, it's just sitting on your counter.
Yep.
Right, fermenting. And like, I mean, same with the sauerkraut and the kimchi. I mean, it's really, you just need to, put your eyes on it
Mm-hmm.
for a minute or two every single day, but it really is doing the work for you. So there's nothing really heavy duty that you have to do with it. And it's so, I mean, my sauerkraut, I mean, it all tastes so much better than when you buy it from the store
Mm-hmm.
also. But I want to go back. I agree with you with just getting educated
Mm-hmm.
that we really do need to have some education, right? And I think just at the basic level, if something doesn't smell right, don't even, because now I'm remembering that when I started making my sauerkraut, I made 2 jars of it. One of them was going down that path. I'm not sure why though. I don't, because both of them were sitting side by side on the counter, and I could smell it, and I smelled it after a couple of days. I'm like, this does not smell right at all, and I'm not taking my chances. The
Mm-hmm.
other one came out fine, and that one's been great. But the other one, but the first one didn't smell right. Now I could take a guess as to what was happening, but I'm not still quite sure. Yeah. So anyway, fermenting is on my list of homesteading things, sort of like at the more so at the bottom. I want to though make this more of a habit for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
the counter spray is great. I
Yeah,
love that.
I love it too. You can actually make vinegar with wine as well, and I've done that successfully once. And then I tried putting a mother in it, which a mother is kind of like it's a mass of bacteria that forms in another type of fermentation. So sometimes you'll see your brine. I have a lemon brine where I ferment lemons and then use them for cooking and stuff. And there was like this kind of blob at the bottom. That's the mother. And so you can take that and you can put it in other things. I put it in my wine and it did not like it. And so I also did the sniff test and I'm like, this is not good. This one has to go. And I think you have to, for me, there's you know, I, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so I have to be really okay with you cannot learn unless you make mistakes. Like it's not that sauerkraut was ruined and you are a failure and you should just never do it again. It was like, no, you trusted your instincts. You trusted that your body was telling you what you needed. And now you can very gently be happy that 50% of the sauerkraut is doing well. And I mean, I had slimy onions once and I don't need to kind of go into what did I do wrong? And I just, for some reason, the onions did not agree with my ferment that time. And then I love this idea of making this, bringing this up to the higher up on your priority list because it's such an easy thing to do. And that's why I'm so excited to talk about habits with you because people don't realize that once you get some habits, it becomes joyful, it becomes a pleasure, it becomes not difficult. And I will say the first secret, if we can start just with this, is something you said from your example. You told me that we're going to have another podcast, and so you had accountability. We were going to be talking about your vinegar. And so it definitely, when we have accountability, I am known for calling a friend up and being like, hey, how are you doing on your exercise? Do you want to text me every day and we'll just, get kind of connected on it, or whatever habit that I'm trying to form, accountability goes a long way.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. There's no way I was going to show up on this podcast without first having made that vinegar. I'm like, I have to make the vinegar because Elizabeth gave me the recipe, and and I was curious to make it
Hmm.
too, and
Yeah.
it came out great. So, but I definitely wanted to have it made. I didn't want to come on here and say sorry, I didn't make it. I got lazy or anything like that. So, yeah, accountability is really super important, I think. I think it definitely helps with habit formation. But I just want to just quickly go
Mhm.
back, just in case some of my listeners have not listened to the first episode,
Mhm.
because we talked about this concept in the first episode of homesteading. So
Mhm.
I just want to remind people, if they, or if they haven't listened, what homesteading is for you. Because I think when we started our conversation the last time,
Mhm.
I had it in my head that you were living in like some remote area of California and you were living off the land. And that's what I thought of homesteading,
Mhm.
as that you're really kind of off grid, off land, and you're
Mhm.
surviving this way. And you showed me that that's not necessarily how it has to be, and that homesteading is more of a mindset, that there's a mindset around it. So can you just tell my listeners, just quickly, just to catch them up, where you live and what your homesteading is like? And then I want to talk about the habits and how to make this more of a habit.
Absolutely. So I do have some eyeliner on. I did not go outside, grab some bark, burn it, and then put it on my eyelids. I, I am a Southern California girl, and I live where I can see telephone poles outside of my window. I live in the suburbs. Um, there's lots of cement and there are lots of conveniences here. So homesteading doesn't have to be living off grid, which kudos to those that do it. And let me tell you, if someone gave me 100 acres of land, if one of your listeners would like to gift me with 100 acres of land, I will take it and I will make them vinegar until their dying day, happily. But for now, I live in this beautiful suburb with lots of lovely neighbors, and I didn't even know what homesteading was. What I'm come to see that it is modern homesteading, which is different than that living off grid with fighting off bears, is a practice of cultivating resilience through a more intentional way of living. If I had to say it in one sentence, that would be it. It is a practice of cultivating resilience through a more intentional way of living. And this includes reducing toxic load in our homes, like making yourself vinegar to clean your house instead of buying the thing that says organic but has 500 ingredients that you spray on your counters. It involves building our gut microbiome with nutrient dense foods like sauerkraut. It involves growing edible landscaping, which you're already doing, I'm already doing. And for those of you that think, oh, I can't do it because I live in an apartment, my book, The Homesteader Mindset, talks about that as well. Like you're able to do it anywhere. There are many different spokes to homesteading, and we're just connecting deeply with our own innate resourcefulness.
Yeah, so that is very different than just the general concept of homesteading, right? That
Mhm.
someone can do this anywhere. It
Yes,
doesn't have to be on 100 acres of land. It can be in an apartment. It can be what you can do for yourself that feels good for you, right?
that's
So,
right.
okay, so let's now go into the creating a habit around this, because it definitely takes some commitment and some habit formation, and to get going and to realize that this is a benefit for you, right? So
That's right.
let's talk about how you created your habits. I mean, was there a moment when you realized that you were no longer like trying to live differently, that this just became like part of your daily living?
I think it goes back to my medical training and then my language learning hobby, because that is when I learned that the brain creates habits and loves patterns and loves novelty and repetition, which sounds like opposites, but that's not true. And so as I was learning languages, I'd always been a neuroscience nerd. I always, in the clinic, in my graduate school work at the clinic in school, and then in my own clinic, I always worked on emotional issues and neurological issues because they fascinated me. And so then when I started learning languages and I had to learn how to create habits in it, I was working, I had a clinic that I was running. I didn't have time to just spend hours upon hours upon hours of learning languages. And so I started reading up on habit creation and habit forming. Actually, a friend of mine, a polyglot that speaks, I think, like 5 or 6 languages, he sent me a book after I gave a presentation as a gift. It was called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And this book blew my mind because, number one, the nerdy science geek in me could learn all about the different parts of the brain and where routine and habit connect. And it also got me on this idea of, oh, I could do this for patients, because patient compliance was something that I was constantly questioning. Why aren't my patients doing this? They come in, they feel better, they want to feel better. I give them some ideas, they go home, they don't do them. They come back in feeling bad, and then they feel better after the treatment, but they could feel so much better. And I knew it wasn't a case of lazy or unintelligent. These were smart, creative, successful people that were coming to my clinic. Why weren't they able to do it? They have the same 24 hours as everyone else. So do I. And that's when I started realizing that a lot of them are stuck in the paralysis of, I want to do it, but I have these 3 myths. It's going to take up too much time. I don't have time. It's too complicated, and I don't have enough money. And so I started working firstly with I don't have time. Like, is that true? Is it true that we don't have time? I could easily convince you that I do not have time. But when we look at language learning, they talked a lot about dead time. I really didn't like that word. It sounded kind of morbid. I don't want to be hanging out with zombie time. So I recoined it found time. And what found time is anytime you're pulling away from what's happening in the present moment and reaching for a distraction. So how many times a day do you pick up your phone and you just check text messages, even though you're not expecting a text message, or you find yourself scrolling and then 15 minutes later, or gosh, 2 hours later, you're like, what have I done? That is found time. And I don't want to take away the reward that you get for checking your text messages and seeing a cute picture of your grandkid. I absolutely don't want to take that away from you. And we can add something to that found time and create habits. So when that light bulb went off for me, which was habit chaining, habit stacking, the 5-minute rule, when that light bulb went off, I realized that I could learn languages with 5-minute increments a day. And so when I bumped into homesteading, which you and I talked about how I accidentally became a homesteader in the April episode, it was a light bulb moment for me. I already knew I know how to create systems. So I'm just going to translate, pun intended, I'm going to translate my language learning habits into homesteading habits. And I just started one step at a time. So I'll give you an example of habit stacking and habit chaining, because that's what people are like, what does that mean? Habit stacking is when you take a habit that you already have and you put another habit on top of it. So one example is during a daily commute to work, you might want to search for podcasts on healing herbs in the kitchen. And then during your daily commute, you just click one before you get in the car. Well, before you turn it on, of course, you don't want to get any tickets. And you listen to that podcast on healing herbs in the kitchen. For me, I did this with castor oil. I wanted to know everything about castor oil. Everyone talked about its beauty properties and what it does for the skin. I'm like, yeah, but I've heard there's more. I've heard there's more. And so I just listened to every podcast that existed on castor oil for a couple of weeks. And then I got fairly good at understanding what castor oil does scientifically. So that's habit stacking. You take something that's kind of a mindless task, and then you add another one on top. Habit chaining is when you take a habit that already exists and you do a habit before it, a new habit before it, or a new habit after it. So for me, after washing my dishes today, I wanted to think of a very current habit that I chained. I usually do one small homesteading task. One, like 5 minutes or less. And in this case, I was like, well, my kefir is good, so I don't need to check on my kefir. It's super hot here. We need to stay hydrated. I'm going to make an herbal infusion. So the garden herbal infusion is something that I've coined, but it's just herbs. You throw them in a big pitcher of water, which I see. It's show and tell today, Heather. I brought these specifically. I brought these specifically for you. So I have a giant mason jar. It's about a half-gallon mason jar with a plastic lid that has a spout and a handle. I got that at masontops.com. I love that company. And so now I have this canister for water. I went out to my garden barefoot and I took my scissors and clipped off lemon verbena, a little bit of rue, which is the herb of grace. I love learning about the folklore around herbs. So if I seem a little more dignified or graceful today, that's why. If I don't, then you have no idea how ungraceful I am normally. because Herb of Grace helped me. I did a few blooms of marigolds and then just a small snipping of rosemary. Put it in some water. I was standing barefoot in my grass while I was doing this, and this was just the one. It was less than 5 minutes, just like your stirring of the vinegar. And this did something called stacking in permaculture. So function stacking in permaculture is you have a product or a behavior or a relationship in your life and you stack functions on it. In the case of this, I had sunlight therapy. You know, when your eyes see natural sunlight, they create enzymes for your body. I had barefoot grounding, so I was getting a different electrical charge from the ground. The garden reward, because a lot of times gardeners will work really hard in their garden and then they won't go out and enjoy it. And instead, I gave myself a little dopamine of like, look what I created while not doing much work. And then, of course, the herbal infusion for easy hydration. So I hope that gave you kind of an idea of how I started creating habits.
Yes, no, that all really makes sense. And I think what I was thinking while you were saying that is that it, I think for me at least, all goes back to my why, like why I even want to do this in the first place. And rather than thinking like, well, someone on social media said it was cool, or like it's kind of like a thing to do. But for me at least, right, making herbal infusions with water is, or growing my garden, making my own sauerkraut, these are so important, like innately important to me, that it brings me a lot of motivation, because I know that growing my own tomatoes, for example, and picking them and eating them right away is not only just super nutritious, they taste better, and it gives me a lot of really good feelings of joy to do
Mhm.
that. And so that for me also starts with like the why am I even doing this all in the first place?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Just starting with your why, to get people who are maybe just still going to argue that I am too busy, I'm burnt out. Where am I finding the time to do this? And I get it. I mean, believe me, I could sit on my email, on social media, which I, such a love, mostly hate relationship with. And I mean, you could kill 30, 60 minutes
Yes.
at a time, which could go then towards doing something more useful and joyful.
Yes. I think that this is such an important point that you bring up because I remember in my 40s, I read, okay, so the way that my brain works is I have a problem, I need to find a solution, I'm going to research that solution. And so I typically will get on an idea. I had someone that was in my family that was sick with cancer, and we were putting her through hospice care and we were caregiving. And so I read every book on death and dying because I wanted to make sure that I did it right. But I was also super curious. My why was, how can I give her the best dignity of life into her new transition as possible? I did the same with time management. I thought if I could only get the right bullet journal and the right highlighters and the right stickers, then my life would be just amazing and I would get everything done that I wanted to get done. And what I realized is that I had an unsolvable riddle because my time management had nothing to do with the lack of self-care as a priority. So my priorities were screwed up. It doesn't matter what I'm going to do with time management. If you don't know what you want, you will not get it. I promise you. And so I, in my 40s, didn't know what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to do all the things that you're supposed to do to be a good healthcare practitioner. I wanted to make sure that I was top notch in my clinic and that I was knowledgeable about what I was treating. I wanted to make sure that I was healthy because I got to be a good role model, et cetera, et cetera. And that is what landed me with a chronic illness. I didn't have self-care as a priority. And I also thought that self-care meant exercising well, eating well, and sleeping well. Like I thought it was all the stuff that the fitness magazines tell you. And what I realized is that I had missed out on the delight and pleasure of living. That sounds so insane that I forgot to be happy, you know? But then when I got sick and everything was taken away. My profession, my ability to stand on my own or think on my own or finish full sentences. It got really clear that self-care was more than just sleeping okay, eating okay, resting okay. And so my why for homesteading, because it happened during the pandemic and I was panicked. I'm like, well, I can't find food. This is not good. This is really concerning to me. My why was resilience, being able to do something, not everything. I don't have enough food to last, 5 winters, but I do have the resilience to know what broccoli looks like when it's coming out of the ground, know what a seed needs and how if it's a bigger seed, it needs to go a little farther down in the ground. If it's a lighter seed, it goes on the top. It also gives me this feeling of freedom. And I'm not saying freedom in the like I'm free from all responsibility. I can just be on my own. It's not the island unto myself, which I thought in my 20s was what I had discovered. Like, oh, I'll just be isolated and like do everything myself and it'll never be a problem. It turns out we're social beings. You need to be with others. So this freedom is more of this ability to, I have things that I can share with others and I have needs that can be fulfilled from my fellows. And so it connects me, the freedom to connect with my community in a more meaningful way. And then the last why that I have, which I think is more important than any why, quite honestly, and it's going to sound maybe hedonistic, but it's not. That is contentment. Like there's nothing more fulfilling to me than going out barefoot and snipping some of my garden and like noticing the abundance, noticing the health that I'm going to give my family, noticing that there's a good chance that I'm going to stay really healthy and not have another crazy chronic illness, that my husband's going to have to take care of me. He's getting a resilient, strong, healthy wife. My family members are happy. When I'm content, the world becomes a more content place because I'm able to give goodness. I'm able to share goodness because I have it. I'm filling up on it.
That all really makes sense. And it just makes me think of like, I mean, these are all your values, right? So it would almost be important to do a values exercise, right? To just see what's really important to you in life. And I love the contentment part because same for me when I walk into my garden and now my garden's well growing right now and I don't have to do a lot with it, but I love nothing more than walking in there in the afternoon and just kind of strolling around and taking a look, just taking a little mental check at everything, seeing what's growing, seeing what do I need to snip or pull and that creates so much contentment for me and that's one of my values as well is if maybe not the most important value is just that feeling of being content and I get it from my garden
Mm-hmm.
and in this I guess homesteading mindset.
The homesteading mindset. I saw this morning when I was watering my mullein, it's in full bloom right now, and there were about 9 bees on it. And I didn't think about this until you were talking, but I was just, honeybees are kind of mellow, and so they don't mind me getting up close and taking a peek at them. But they had so much pollen connected to their little legs. Like one had way more pollen than the rest. And it was just, this is not something, yeah, you can go look at that on YouTube, but to be in the sunlight, watching nature and seeing how the fact that I planted that mullein 2 years ago is feeding these bees and they're creating incredible honey. That's just this amazing circle of life that I get to be a part of. What better meditation can you have?
Yes, and the circle of life. I mean, right,
Mm-hmm.
it all comes back full circle. You
Yeah.
grow things, you can compost, which I do a lot. That compost then turns into dirt that goes into my garden and it all is a big circle of life, which is another thing I find fascinating that I can have some control over that. I
Yeah.
can I can do my part in that. And then also just grow things that are so nutritious and good for me. So it's all, yeah, it all goes back, I think, to this why and to what we really value. And I think some people don't even realize that sometimes. They're not even
Well,
clear on how things grow in a garden.
yeah, I
And
wasn't.
yeah,
I absolutely was not. I didn't know. I was 40 years old and didn't know what broccoli looked like. And that sounds so sad, but I like to say it because now when people come to my house and they see that there are 50 things growing, and I really haven't done anything for, 2 weeks on my garden and it's just doing quite well. They think that I've always known how to do that. And I learned it very quickly through 5-minute exercises, 5-minute habit stacks. So can I ask you a question about I want to go back to the vinegar because I really like talking about
Yes.
a habit that's really fresh in your mind.
Yes,
So
definitely.
you've decided you've got your accountability. You know that we're going to be chatting. You know that you've got to do it. Did you habit chain or habit stack to get that vinegar going?
Well, let's see. I mean, I thought while I'm making the vinegar, I'm going to make the sauerkraut too. And I'm
Mm.
also going to make the kimchi because while things are sitting on my counter,
Mm-hmm.
why not do all of it?
Yeah. So
And
you have it
so,
stacked. Yeah,
yeah,
you
so I
totally have
have
it
it
stacked.
stacked that way. And, so then every single day I was checking all of them.
How did you remember to check them?
Well, they were right I'm in my kitchen a lot
Hmm.
cooking. So, I mean, they're
Hmm.
like they were sort of right in front of me,
Where you
in
could
front of
see
my
them.
face. So I could see them pretty well. And I even went up to, we have a place in Maine. I drove up there. I took them all with me because I didn't
That's
want to leave them
fantastic.
alone for we were only up there for about a week, but I didn't want to leave
Uh-huh.
them
Yeah.
alone. And so they came with me and then we came back. And so I think just having them right in front of me in the
Hmm.
kitchen
Hmm.
was the best way to remind me. If I didn't have them in my kitchen, I probably would have put a reminder on my phone,
Hmm. Yep.
on my in my calendar, just
That's a
to ding me.
Yeah. So what you did was you made it easy and accessible, which is one of the ways to create habits, and you made it attractive because it looks pretty it's ferments are really pretty and they're fun to see them, growing and changing colors and all that stuff. And so these are two ways that the book Atomic Habits talks about this. In my book as well, I talk about it because I translate it into homesteading, but making it attractive, making it easy for you to remember. So for me, a lot of times my homesteading tasks will connect to like before I brush my teeth. It's bedtime. I'm about to brush my teeth. I'm letting the dog out. I have to walk through the kitchen to let the dog out. And in that moment, I'm going, I probably should check on my kefir and see how it's doing. And if it needs to go into a hotel or if it needs to have a new ferment that moment, it takes about 5 minutes. I quickly tend to my kefir and then off I go to bed. But it's connected. It's easy. It's accessible. And it's attractive because my kefir is really cute on my counter.
Right. Yeah. No, it was nice. I had about 4 jars going on my counter, and that was
Nice.
kind of, curious, and people were wondering what was going on in there, and
Yeah.
and so it was, yeah, that definitely kept my attention with it. Now I mean, interesting though that now that we're talking about this. So I made everything, and I haven't done it again. I haven't started like a next round.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking, I'm like, why haven't I started a next round of the vinegar, and I will, though now that we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about it again, I'll have to have you back on in a couple of months to
Deal.
keep me accountable. But it's, yeah, so I could see how you could get into a habit and
Mm-hmm.
how it might get me out of a habit. But I also, now that we're talking about this out loud, I mean, I have my spray, I have my sauerkraut still. I'm not finished with it, and I'm not finished with the kimchi. So I'm not feeling maybe that motivated to start it again because I have it.
Yeah, you've got plenty on supply. I don't do a continuous thing of vinegar. I do a continuous thing of kefir because it really helps my gut. It's just fantastic for my body. And we go through a lot of it. We make ice cream with kefir, we make sour cream and like a creamy yogurt, and then also a tzatziki, like a Greek chip dip, although I use cucumbers for the chip. So, but I'm not constantly doing all of them. There's kind of ebbs and flows. I would say that one thing that really helps, and it's kind of like accountability, but it's also just a motivation, is allowing yourself to talk about these passions. So when people come over to my house, they will inevitably get fed some sort of fermented product from my house, or we will go out and I'll put my hands in the compost and let them smell it because it's quite remarkable what rotten food can smell like once it's become compost. Or we'll walk around, we'll walk around the garden and I'll just show them, we'll just taste some of the food. And so because I have such a passion for it, I'm continually renewing that passion by teaching. And I think that's what you do with podcasting too. Every time you're sitting down with someone, you're getting new ideas. And right now you're like, oh, it might be a good idea to try some more vinegar or, whatever I'm going to make. The same here. And it's also kind of remarkable when somebody has an issue and then because kefir, believe it or not, homemade kefir can be used as a lubricant for women. So I have some friends that are having difficulty post-menopause, and they had no idea that this can actually help balance your hormones. It's a one ingredient, and it's also going to help your gut microbiome and also the microbiome on your skin and in your groin. And so it's amazing that when you start learning more, right? Knowledge is power. Then you go, oh, this could help this person and this could help that person. And the more you teach, the more you get inspired to continue to learn more yourself and also to continue to grow and to have that fermentation station is what I call it. You had a little fermentation station. Now, did you use a bowl to keep it from spilling over or for the kimchi? I think kimchi and sauerkraut don't really spill over much.
Yeah, I didn't have a bowl. They don't usually spill over. So nothing was spilling over. So I
That's
didn't
good.
feel the need to do anything like that.
Yeah. So for those that are listening, typically when you're doing sauerkraut, kimchi, a lot of the cabbages don't get super fizzy, but with other things like pickled carrots, you take some carrot sticks, put them in a brine. A brine is just salt water, which is 2 cups water to 1 tablespoon of salt. That's the one that I use for everything. It's a bit salty, but then you don't have a problem. I don't like to. You can look online and find out specific ones, but I'm not going to do that. And then if you have that and you put your carrots in it and then you close it tightly with a canning jar, you just fingertip tight. Every day you have to burp it. You have to open it up and burp it. Well, a lot of times with things other than sauerkraut, like the carrots or sometimes the onions, if you do pickled onions, which taste great on hoagies back east, here they're called, I think, submarine sandwiches, subs, they'll overflow. And sometimes even you do it morning and night, you do this burp, it'll just fizzle out. And so a lot of times we'll have like a very big, it's like not a fruit bowl, but it's like a fruit plate and it's got a lip on it. So it's like a very small bowl and that just keeps it from spilling all over the place for those of you that want to not have a mess. Now, for those of you that want to trick your husband into some fun prank, you can wait a day and then have him open up the ferment. Which I did not do on purpose, but my husband, I was away. I did not take my sauerkraut with me. And I'm like, honey, can you please burp these? And he wrote, oh my gosh, the ferments fermented me. And he just had he didn't know what to do. So if you're opening it and they're starting to fizz, open it quickly. Because if you don't, it becomes this fountain and it will be very funny. It'll make for some funny YouTube videos.
That's very funny. Yeah. So I think the takeaway is, things happen like that, right?
Yes.
Mistakes happen and it's okay. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you failed or it didn't work or you can't do this. You don't know how to do it. This is reminding me of, when I was up in Maine, I decided I have a sourdough starter. I bake bread a decent amount. And I thought, I'm going to make my own sourdough starter to have up there so I don't keep bringing my very old starter that I have had for a long time back and forth. And so I made a new sourdough starter up there and it takes a couple of days. Same, you have to leave it on the counter. You have to feed it every single day, dump it out. And then one day, I think on like the 6th day, it completely exploded. I mean, and this is like not just I woke up the next morning and it was just all over the counter, which is a good thing. I mean, that means it's like alive and well and it's, and it's not dying, but it was, just one of those I wasn't expecting things that happened. So
you got the Hulk of sourdough that day.
Yes. It was pretty funny. So we're talking about a lot of things that might sound complicated to some people, like kefir. Meanwhile, that's one thing I have never made, and that's next on my list is that we're talking about kefir. I want to make that. And this can feel overwhelming to
Hmm.
some, like I'm talking about sourdough starter,
Hmm.
sauerkraut, and but let's say someone who's listening is curious, homesteader curious, but
Hmm.
they're just feeling a little overwhelmed. What's
Yeah.
what is one like ridiculously simple thing that you feel like they could start with? Or even
Okay.
a habit, or just either one, like an
Yeah.
activity, like a growing something or a habit that they could start
Okay.
with.
I'll give you two because these can be done in the city, in a rural area, in the suburbs. The first is when you're at the grocery store, buy a basil plant. They almost always have some sort of basil plant there. Just buy a little basil plant, put it on your windowsill, water it every now and snip off one or two leaves and throw it in your water every day. Or when you walk by, just touch it with your hands gently and get a little smell of basil. So that you have something living in your home. Like you mentioned the last time that we talked, like, well, you have plants behind you now. I never did before because I killed all of them, but I slowly learned how to commune with plants. So that is your first, just go out and get a little basil plant or a little rosemary plant and just put it in your windowsill. It probably will not, well, basil will not live forever unless it's blue tie basil, which is a perennial, but you're going to need another one. But for the few weeks or month that you have it, you'll start getting used to knowing like, oh, if I don't water this plant, it gets a little wilty. It needs a little more water. If it's starting to get yellow or it's starting to look a little like it's getting mushy, then it has too much water. And you're just getting to know what it's like to tend to another living being. So that's the first one. The second one is, let's say you were like me and you're 40 years old. This was when I was 40 years old. You're well into your career, you're super busy, you buy all the organic good food, but you've never cooked yourself. It's just not what you do. I recommend learning how to bake a chicken. It's so simple. When I first started learning how to cook, which is pretty much how I cook now, and it's so funny because people always ask me for recipes, and I'm like, but I'm not a cook, but I am, right? Because now I know how to cook. All of my recipes are typically three steps or less. So I'm making an online course on kefir because I love kefir so much, and I want people to understand the biological medicinal properties of kefir as well as how to do it. It takes 5 minutes to do it. So every recipe that I have in there is three steps or less. And it wasn't on accident. It was when I was first learning how to cook, I would go to online and I'd look up recipes. And if it had more than three steps, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do this. And out it went. So for baking a chicken, the three steps are buy a good chicken from a reputable company. Like there's a place called Primal Pastures, which is about an hour from my house. I visited the farm. Believe it or not, good farmers will let you see how they're taking care of their animals. So I buy my chickens from them. When I wash it, I just wash it in water and I pat it dry. I put some chicken fat on it. I throw some salt and maybe another seasoning like pepper or chipotle if I want to go wild and crazy. I stick it in the oven, I think at 375 for 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes. And now I have 5 meals that are ready and accessible. So those are the two quickies. Like for me, that originally sounded insane. Like, oh my gosh, I got to buy a chicken. I got to find out where it is. Just buy a chicken to start. And then you can eventually work on getting a better chicken. And then just work on, covering it in some sort of fat and putting it in the oven. And if you forget to do salt because, oh my gosh, this is your first time and you only listen to this podcast once, that is okay. You can salt it afterwards. But learning to get connected to how to make fast food, I think is one of the most modern homesteading things you can do. These are fast food. Yesterday, my husband came home from work. I was busy doing something. Typically, I like to have dinner for us, but instead, he took some pasta that I had cooked and put a little olive oil on and kept it in the fridge as a leftover. He chopped up a garlic and a tomato, put it in a frying pan, and then used the chicken that I baked yesterday. And it took all of 5 minutes to make food that was way more nutritious than if he had stood in line at a fast food restaurant. And let me tell you, I used to do that in my 30s. I would go to like the healthiest fast food place because I didn't know how to cook. And so those are, I would say, two things. I think probably buying the basil plant sounds a little less complicated, huh? That might be the first one to try.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, though. I mean, just getting a plant, learning how to grow something, even if it's one basil plant on your counter,
Yeah.
I think it is such a simple, easy idea, and you can feel successful at it.
Yeah.
right? And then maybe you can get more basil and, you can finally get enough that you're making some pesto or
Yeah.
like I just
And
did
that
yesterday.
Ooh, and that's the secret, right? You had said it earlier. The secret is you start with one thing. I'm going to make vinegar, and then you're like, well, while I'm here, I might as well make sauerkraut. I've done it, but it's this rabbit hole that you go down, this rabbit hole of contentment and joy that you go down, and you're like, oh, sourdough doesn't sound like something that's interesting to me, but she did talk about having ripened tomatoes. That sounds kind of cool, and then you just slowly add a little at a time.
Yeah. And I think just also feeling the confidence to do it.
Mhm.
I think that I know for me, for a lot of my clients, that fear of cooking that, and which I think really translates into a fear of disappointing people or not being good enough or letting people down and we got to let that go,
Yeah.
right? We make mistakes, we get back up and we try again. So I wanted to ask you a question just going along with that. Are there any habits or any things that you started that you feel like totally flopped, like that you're like, I'm never doing that again? And what did you learn from that? Like what would be like a takeaway?
Okay. Yeah. There's lots of them that I flopped. And I love that I do want to piggyback on what you said. Your self-worth is not connected to the outcome. Like your self-worth is innate. It is, you are given, you're worthy. That's it. And when you start looking at these experiments, is what I call them, with the eye of a scientist, it becomes less personal. So for my husband and I, when I sit down and I try a new meal, which is 3 steps or less, I'll go, what do you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10? And he'll be like, oh, I think that's a 6. And I'm like, really? I think it's like a 4. And it doesn't denote what my self-worth is. It's, am I going to do this recipe again, or am I going to try again and tweak it a little? So with that being said, I got a big fat 0 on one of my composting adventures. My friend came over to stay with me for a few days, and I'm like, it'd be great. Let's go and we had this patch of sweet peas. That sweet pea is a flower, but it's very viney, and we took it and we chopped it all down and we made some of it into mulch. And I took a big gigantic heap of it, like a huge tarp of it, and threw it in a compost pile. And then I did nothing to it because I saw this YouTube video where in 30 days it was just magically better. And mine turned into this scary looking like rodent cavern. I don't know if there are rats in it, but I want to find out. And I'm so afraid to move it with a pitchfork that I think I'm going to need to have someone come out. I need like a partner in crime to come out and probably throw it into my green bin and just start again, because it just looks like it's harboring fugitive rodents. It really does. Oh, I got another one for you. This is a really bad one. I ripened tomatoes. So there was somebody eating my tomatoes in my garden, and I was like, I'm going to take these into my she shed, which is like my garden shed, and I'm going to ripen them in there, and ha ha ha, they won't get them anymore. Well, then a rat found them and said, oh my gosh, this newly planted she shed is beautiful. It's comfy. It's got a cushioned seat, and they give me free food here. And so
Oh.
I'm not often scared of, but for some reason my brain's like, rats are terrible. So I let out a murder scene scream and wouldn't go back in until a friend of mine went in and scared it away. And then I had to do peppermint oil, which actually did get rid of the just essential oil of peppermint, got rid of the rat in my shed. And I will never again ripen tomatoes in a she shed.
Well, thank you for your vulnerability. I appreciate your honest failure stories because I think this is what we need to share also.
Yeah.
Because when you're on social media or on YouTube, or I mean, it's like all a little magical world out there. But I think the takeaway is that things happen, mistakes happen. It's no big deal. I've
It's no
burnt
big deal.
I've burnt plenty of things in my kitchen before, and I cook for a living. I mean, it happens. I mean,
Oh, that's actually
it's not
good to
fun,
hear.
but it's not like, yeah, but I mean, I've made things that were, yeah, like I
Mm-hmm.
thought were like a 0 on the scale of 1 to 10, where I'm like,
Yeah.
this just tastes terrible. And like, what did what I do? But I think that's just how you learn.
It absolutely is, but it's funny because I just would assume that you've never burned anything. Isn't that silly? That I would think that like your brain does think that, like, oh, well, she's a chef, so of course, she's never had. You had to learn somehow, you know.
Right. Yes. I mean, it doesn't happen daily to me,
Oh,
but I
right.
mean, but every once in a while, like something will
Mhm.
happen. I'm like, Oh, wow. Like, I can't believe that I like that burned. Like, why did that
Mhm.
happen? And, or, something similar.
Mhm.
Something just doesn't taste right and yeah, that's part of how you get better, I think, at
That's
things.
right. And that self-talk, like be very conscious of what you are saying to yourself, because I could easily have gone into who puts like delicious fruit out in a shed where rodents can get to it. Like they, obviously it's not steel door or anything. I could have easily beat myself up about it, but instead I chose to go like, oh yeah, that's a very dumb mistake, but it doesn't mean I'm dumb. It just means I made a mistake. And
Right.
everything can be fixed. There's no such thing as an, irreversible mistake in terms of homesteading, as long as you're really, yeah.
Yes, you just made a mistake. You're
Uh-huh.
not a mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's just, and it's all a learning process. I mean, if you saw how I was gardening 25 years ago versus how I'm gardening now, you would think, I mean, my 25-year ago self was not doing it correctly. So yeah, this is how you learn.
Yeah.
So, are there any new projects now that it's summer? Are you into new um, habits now for the summertime? I know you are in San Diego, right? That area. So, like, your seasons probably don't change that much. But what?
It gets hotter. It gets
Okay.
hotter. And so summer is tricky for us because it can be so hot that it's really not safe to be out gardening all day. And I'm not I have a pretty busy morning routine because that's when I have a lot of my energy. And then in the evening I'm like, ugh, I don't want to go out, but it's important to go out and, tend to your garden. And so what I've started doing recently is habit stacking, watering my garden with guilty pleasure podcasts. So the podcasts that I don't want anyone to know I'm listening to, they're kind of, they're silly, they're a waste of time, but if I only listen to them while I'm watering, I have a little more motivation to go out, because I used to be a Puritan and I still am a lot of the times, where I just want to be with my plants and not have something talking at me, because I think we can add too much to us. But for me right now, that's a really good way to get outside when it's too hot and it's a little late and it's hard for me to get my motivation. Oh, well, I'll just watch I'll just listen to that podcast and no one will know, except now all of your listeners will know.
Right. Well, you can
Right.
listen to this podcast, right?
That's right. This podcast would be great.
Yeah, but same. I do the same. If I'm feeling low energy or something like that, I'll put a podcast or a book on or
Hmm.
something just to break it up. But or I do like going into my garden with no noise
Hmm.
whatsoever and just,
It's the
being at
best.
peace. Yeah. Yes. Well, Elizabeth, any other takeaways about habits that you can give my audience or, some imparting wisdom?
Yes, I would say that the 5 minute rule is one of my favorite things, and then I will give you a little gift for your audience members that would like it. The 5 minute rule is just try doing a habit for 5 minutes and then giving yourself permission not to do it after. And so for me with the guilty pleasure podcast, like let's say that gets me out there, but what really gets me out there is saying, I'm just going to set the kitchen timer for 5 minutes. I'm going to prune that monster purple. I don't even know what the purple bush is in front of my house that's growing over all of my food. Like I went away for a week and I came back and it's this monster. But if I just tell myself, I'm just going to prune it for 5 minutes and then I can stop. I really, truly do stop after 5 minutes. And sometimes you want to go longer, but giving yourself that permission really stops you from going, oh, I just don't have time. Everybody has 5 minutes. And then allow yourself to do the whatever bad habit that you typically have. Like, let's say you're going to scroll through social media. Fine. Do the 5 minutes of the habit that you want to create, and then reward yourself with as long as you want, as you would normally do, of the habit that you consider not the best. And so for habit creation, I did create a free habit tracker that is available to your audience. You can get it at www.createwellnessproject.com/gift, GIFT.
Okay, great. I will put that also in the show notes so people
Thank you.
can grab that link. Elizabeth, thank you so much once again. Every time we talk now, I just feel inspired. My next project is to make kefir. And I'm going to look up. So do you have your course online yet?
No, I have probably about 10 more hours to do, but I am
Okay.
going to send you the course once I'm done so that you can enjoy it.
Okay, that would be wonderful. And then I will let you know how that goes as well. You're my
Great.
accountability partner now.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for being here again. I really appreciate it. And I hope this inspires everyone to get growing or do something homestead minded.
Thank you, Heather. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks. And as always, if you loved this podcast, please consider gifting me with a 5-star review. It is so helpful for me to get the word out on real eating, our real bodies, and real food stories. Thank you so much and have a great week. Bye for now.